Hi everybody, and I'd like to wish you all the best in the new year. We are at Gaidar Forum today, and I think we have one of the most vivid discussions today, which will be devoted to quite a philosophical question. Not who has a good place to live in Russia, but where is the best place to live in Russia. We are going to discuss cities today. We will speak about the quality of living standards of our citizens in Russian cities and abroad. And as organizers told me, you are going to have a women's session today. It's almost the one. We have today Polina Krychkova, Deputy Minister of Economic Development of the Russian Federation, and our online guest to balance out a little bit our audience. We have Andrey Samokhin from VEB.RF Group, Chief Executive Officer, Head of Analytic and Marketing Unit. We envy you. You look so suntanned, and let us begin our discussion. Before we start, due to the fact that on tradition, Gaidar Forum is a sort of an event which is organized for people, for the wide audience and for experts, I'd like to turn to our audience, to our viewers, with the question, the result of which we will see in the end of our session. Please, dear organizers, pull up this question on our screens, and the question is the following: what for you, for each of you, is a fairy tale city or a dream city? And here there are some variants of answer. Is it a big city with traffic jams, with queues in stores? Or is it a Izhevsk, an industrial town with a high potential of growth? Or is it a Yalta, a resort, a sunny southern town with seasonal employment? Or Salekhard, the extreme north, harsh climate but high salaries? Meanwhile, our dear viewers would vote. I'd like to go a little bit into depth of our today's discussion, to delve into the context. We're going to discuss quality of living standards in Russian cities. Probably we will try to answer the question of our Russian poet Nekrasov and find the happiest person in Russia. And before we start our discussion, I'd like to discuss in general what is the quality of life. It's a very well known and common notion, sometimes notorious because it is widely used for different things, but for the real quality of life. For some, it's a philosophical question. It's a good quality of life in any place with the person you love. But coming back to the economic prehistory, it's been a while that the quality of a country and living standards was evaluated through macroeconomic statistics and macroeconomic indicators. But at some point of time around the noughties, it has become obvious, but the economic growth is not the quality of life. There was a study in 2019 for China. We remember the booming growth of China in the beginning of the century, and this study showed that despite the booming economic growth, the mortality rate in traffic accidents of tumors and diseases of Chinese and their expenses for healthcare were huge. The economic growth did not correlate with the quality of life of people in the country. And due to that, in 2007, under the auspices of Nicolas Sarkozy, a special commission was established, and this commission had a task to determine objective indicators at the country level which would demonstrate the real quality of life in a country. And the in the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development created the think tank to work on these indicators. The culmination was in 2019. The 2010, the Quality Index was launched. This is an international initiative, international index by countries. 11 areas were selected, including 24 indicators which use the statistics which was collected for more than 50 years and could give us the full picture, what is quality of life and how safe you feel in your country, in your city, in the midnight, in a dark street, or a subjective indicator of satisfaction, or the indicator whether you have a relative or friend with whom you could share your happiness or your trouble. Or statistically hard indicators like number of car accidents, the cellular level. We saw a combination of different indicators, but each of these indicators had a substantive basis. In 2018, OECD launched this initiative in the regional level because it has become obvious it's not possible to embrace everything at the country level. You should go down to regions and most probably to the city level. As a result, we see that in the world there is the international living standard indicator selected by OECD experts and other international organizations. And at the same time, what is the situation in Russia? What do we see here? We see here two good toolkits, the Ministry of Construction Index for the cities and IQ city rate, and we see also dozens of private indices. And the question is why one of the indices shows the happiest population which lives in the city of Grozny, Tolyatti and Penza. And why there? Why those cities? And we do see it in the news, and this is still the open question. And as we believe we should use a more objective living standard indicator, we will discuss what was done last year to bring Russia and Russian cities closer to the quality evaluation which can give us the answer to the question what is the level of the living standard in Russian cities. I'd like to turn to Andrey first, and I'd like to discuss VEB.RF product with you. If you bring it up to the screen, we do know, and we've been working together with you and with colleagues from PricewaterhouseCoopers to establish this international comparable instrument kit and toolkit. You established the life index in the cities of Russia, and what issues does it solve? The issue number one was to place the person in the middle. This indicator cannot evaluate the number of roads in the cities, but to evaluate the vicinity of different facilities and infrastructure like schools and hospitals for the person, the comfort of living. The second thing of this index, each indicator shows what does it influence in the life of the city, and strong and weak sides allow to take proper organizational decisions. We don't just see that there are not enough schools in the city. We understand what it will influence, how it would impact the further development of the city. This methodology gives answers to these questions. Next, we have alignment and synchronization with our national products and projects. The indices are synchronized with it. We cannot do without it. That's obvious. And the fourth, my favorite task, which this index didn't solve, this is the statistics gathering problem at the municipal level. Many parts of this indicator are statistical, they are objective, and while we made it with VEB.RF, there are obvious gaps of data which we couldn't collect at the city level, and we sincerely hope that we will start solving this issue this year. And the fifth, the key and the basic one, is the only tool in Russia which can give international comparison with other cities of OECD, with around 600 regions. 115 cities of Russia can be compared in terms of international indicators. Andrey, a question to you. Could you tell us, please, is the efficiency satisfactory of this approach? What results can we see? Strong sides, weak sides compared to foreign countries, foreign cities? Just a few words. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Good afternoon. I should say in the beginning, last year we launched this product, this project, and the initial idea was to create and to establish an analytical navigator which would allow us to find out weak cities and gaps in the development of cities and take proper investment decisions from the point of view stronger economic and social effects and social projects in the living standards improvement initiatives. And the most important question of this discussion was how to determine this living quality. We should have found proper approaches for this evaluation, and one of the common approach is to measure this objective feeling of happiness. If we took this angle of view, people in Russia feel less happier than all over the world. And in the Living Standard Index, there is another indicator which we call the average satisfaction of living quality, and the results are quite comparable, quite similar between Russian countries and OECD countries. The average index for Russian cities is 6, for OECD is 7. But without other indicators, it's very difficult to operate with only one indicator, especially in the post-Soviet environment. For example, Kazakhstan last year was top 2 and second position in the happiness index. And when we ask a question to the Kazakhstani president, what do you think will next year be better than the 2021? The majority respondents said that it will be better. So we should combine here our evaluation. We should combine material factors and the feelings and opinions of people. And we take the approach of OECD. That's why we actively cooperate with the Center Russia OECD. I will share with you certain cases about the living standards in cities. We build up a certain database. Let's start with the important topic, higher education. 60% of adult citizens have higher education. On average in OECD is 46%. The most educated cities are Voronezh, Bryansk and Kazan, and it is very important to note we do not evaluate the quality of higher education. We don't have it in this index version. We plan to include it in future, but this share of people with higher education shows us the significant basis for economic growth. We took an attentive look at the secondary education. Almost 82% of people live in 20 minutes from schools. This is comparable with the situation for abroad, where the average is 90%. This is a very important living standard factor for parents, for kids, for the development of cities. For the city is better. It means that less trips, and better traffic and better environmental situation. In general, the territorial availability is good, but not enough places in schools. And on average, in 98 cities, with about 20% of pupils have to have the second shift. second shift in schools. The majority of cities is in Makhachkala, Ulan-Ude, and Chita. And in other cities with higher standards, like Khanty-Mansiysk, Krasnodar, and Tomsk, with higher salary levels for web organization, this data is absolutely interesting. Since starting last year, we are dealing with projects of building new schools, and this program, generally speaking, allows us to provide 1 million new school places for children. In VEB.RF, we have 30 schools in our program. We plan to expand it for 150, and this approach would improve the living standards and the quality of education. We received a lot of high-quality data on mobility in Russian regions. We have less car transport, 33 versus 49 in OECD, and this is a good basis for the development of our cities, since we can reduce the negative load on the traffic and on the environment.
And we see that there is a big gap between the vehicle the person has and wants to have, which means that nearly 50% of all Russians would like to have another vehicle than what they have. And this again shows that the public transport is not a very convenient one. Even though now we have bus stops which are in less than 9 minutes of walk from every house, and we know that the vehicles used in public transport in major cities are really obsolete. Many of them are more than 20 years old, which is quite a serious issue. And if we go forward, I would like to mention that our index covers only the main biggest cities of the country. In these cities, we do not have a very highly environmentally friendly transport. In some cities, like Berlin, for instance, in Milan, in Rome, tram is considered as environmentally friendly. Transport means we have projects underway in Krasnodar, Kazan, Yekaterinburg. The authorities of the Tver Oblast, they want to have again the tram lines in the main regional city, and of course we would like to develop these best foreign practices and standards in terms of public transport in our country as well. And we have a single all-round program of modernization of public transport, in implementation of which we participate, and if we take the main cases on this topic, it's the construction of housing. We see that the housing construction rate is increasing all the time, and the average square meters number per capita in Russia is a bit less than 26 square meters per person. And we still know that in Russian cities, each citizen has 0.9 room, less than 1 room per person, and we know that 115 major Russian cities participate in the first step of our program, and now, considering the pandemic, currently there is a very strong trend to work remotely from home. And summarizing what I said, the analysis of these indices makes it possible for us to have an objective information about the quality of life in Russia and to decide in which industries investments are most needed now. This is what we are guided by in our work. Andrey, thank you. I remember how well Andrey explained to us the key indicators, speaking of quality of life, like the number of rooms per person. And this influences both physical and mental health. And on top of this, it also influences the desire to learn in higher schools when a child has enough personal space in the apartment he lives in. And that is important. You see how far go the consequences of this. And now I have a question to you. I love talking to representatives of public authorities. Not just because they are representatives of public authorities, but we are all humans, right? So, I have a question to you as a citizen of Russia. What can you say about it? You have to understand that for everyone, the quality of life means something personal, something different. For someone, it's climate. For someone, the transport availability is top important. For someone, it's something else. For me, for instance, availability of social infrastructure, availability of healthcare establishments, public transport, this is what matters to me. And also the cultural infrastructure matters, so that I can go somewhere and do something I like. Why is it important? Because now, after 2.5 years of the pandemic, I would say, the availability of online content matters and is important for people to feel okay. If someone asked me what is cultural entertainment, I would say, well, if there is a coffee shop around the corner where I could have a cup of coffee with some good friends, that would be a good thing. Okay, you represent the Ministry of Economic Development of Russia. Since we are talking about economic development, it means that you use certain tools to assess the quality of life or the development of a region or a city. It's an honest question requiring an honest answer. Is this quality of life index of interest to you as to the Ministry of Economic Development? Maybe it's unnecessary, maybe it's not timely. You know, honestly, our idea is that we want to have more indices and ratings. There is no one best universal index or rating which can cover everything. That's why, of course, the more tools we have, the better. But provided we think about certain limitations. It doesn't matter what we are comparing, cities, countries, or whatever. We need to first understand what we measure, how we measure, what data are underlying in this case. And it should be stable. And then we understand that we can compare cities, countries, regions. At the same time, if we take indices and ratings existing worldwide, not all of them meet these requirements, and some of them we do not quite understand the methodology. Or when we say city A is better than city B, this is what the experts said. But who are the experts? What were they guided by when they said that this city is better than the other one? Yes, someone said that city A is better than city B. What conclusions can you make policy-wise from this idea? Based on what are these decisions made? We cannot transform this into economic, social, or other policy because it's difficult to transform a subjective opinion into concrete actions. Number two is comparability.
Это задача и проблема, которая стоит отнюдь не только в России.
It is a problem and a goal which is not only present in Russia. And you understand that adequate data, you need a balance, you need an equilibrium between the algorithm of collection of data, data analyzing and processing. Of course, in large and major cities, it's much easier, everything. When we are talking about small remote cities or villages, the problem is there and it's a bad problem there. And we know that even in the same region, there is a big difference between cities. It's difficult. We understand that the data for the region are irrelevant or incomplete. And again, don't forget about the different lifestyles. We can see the same differences within one region in other parts of the country. So we think that the tool that VEB.RF created is a cool one, a very necessary one, but like any tool, it's imperfect because there is no perfection in this world. But I'm very glad that VEB.RF still continues upgrading this tool. It did not abandon it. They upgraded to be able to use it for investing, for economic policy making, and so on. And what's important, it shows to see the differences and to see some common problems which are characteristic of different Russian cities, because our goal is not just to see the differences but also similarities, something we have in common, and such ratings really help us with it. That's why it's a very good and a very important tool. And the more tools we have in our toolkit, the tools dedicated to different aspects, the more indices we'll have and the better it will be. Because this way we will be able to have a volumetric picture of what's going on so that we can shape both the national and regional policy. Thank you. And answering the question regarding the methodology, let me say that the methodology is maximum open and open for communication and discussion with the experts. And I hope that you will agree that our index is very open, and this is extremely important as a task of ours. And one more thing, Andrey, Polina said that this instrument is being developed and, well, a necessary step was made on administrative regulations. We have functional agglomeration boundaries, for instance, and we try actually to compare uncomparable things. We have in Russia cities with administrative city boundaries. We say that there are a couple of cities that are going to collect information, and this will also help us understand the following. Where is this boundary? If a person goes to the city, to the office, this city will be not when he will cross a line shown on the map, but here we are talking about transport infrastructure, which is incomplete in Tomsk. We have an optimal solution that those who live in extreme north conditions, they can go for work elsewhere with better climates. Don't forget about the improper fire safety measures that were not taken, and it resulted in a number of catastrophes. Andrey, I have a double question to you. Number one, is VEB.RF going really to work on this project? And is VEB.RF going to supplement its index by some other parameters like ECG index, for instance? We've been discussing this year, also in the managerial strategies. Thank you. Thank you very much for a very positive assessment of the situation. We perfectly realize that our instrument is far away. And of course, here in Russia today with other partners, we have a very serious approach which we implement. And we see that this became a part of the investment process of our group. And that's a serious challenge. And answering your question, I would like to say that we have a large number of very ambitious goals for this year. Among them, a goal to upgrade this tool. And I think it would be right that we see some good further development of this tool. And how can we see it and judge it? By seeing improvement of life in Russian cities and regions. And the index is going to become more intelligent, more clever. It will be supplemented by new data, new parameters. We are going to expand the geography of the cities and regions covered by the index. And we already started all this work. And we do not weight the best or the worst cities. We just measure the quality of life level to understand what we start working with here or there, and what major projects of city development are currently either improving life or having little influence on the quality of life of citizens. And we want to extrapolate that to other regions because we are sure that this could improve the quality of life in these cities.
In order to implement those 5 ambitious goals, we have to solve a bunch of problems. You already mentioned that we need to improve the statistics data collection at the city level, and this is a very important task. Apart from that, starting from this year, we will increase the number of cities. From 115, we should grow to 200 bigger cities apart from Moscow and St. Petersburg, and this would give us a broader picture of the living quality in Russia. We hope that in our system we will have new useful data with the average check for households in different categories. Like we have a very big ambition now to develop an efficient business models to establish new schools through concessions, and we should understand the current potential demand for additional equipment, for additional education for children, and we can follow up it by financial operations and transactions. We should have also other data required for business and required by business. The average speed of public transport at peak hours, that's what we are lacking now to more efficiently launch our public transportation modernization projects. We do have ambitions for GeoWeb. This is an analytical system for information activities, which is already under tests in web. And we will have also evaluation forms for the quality of healthcare services and education services. You started with the administrative issues, and that's what we're going to deal with. We should understand that the Russian cities and OECD cities are difficult to compare. In the majority of cases, we handle it with the municipality. In OECD countries in 1990s, they moved and to the evaluation on urban zones. And this transition, of course, allows to get understanding of real relations between the rural population and city population, and we can compare here our indices with the indices of OECD. And we'd like to roll out this experience on those 200 cities. You mentioned ESG, and this is the abbreviation which is now a buzzword. As in 2017 we had chain, ESG now influenced business industry very strongly. For VEB, it is a very important agenda, responsible business conduct, and based on the updated data, we plan to pilot ESG factors influence on the living standards in our cities and sustainable development. We understand that to evaluate it in a more systematic way while working with the development of cities, we need this total index, which would allow us to take into account 3 factors: the quality of environmental policy and social support, and the state government. The main shareholders are citizens, of course. They are main beneficiaries, and generally speaking, our whole work is aimed at the improvement of their quality of living. That's why these sub-indices couldn't be torn apart from the responsibilities and demands of our cities. So VEB will develop this area and take into account in our indices. Thanks, Andrey, and I will have the final question to you, Polina. As I already mentioned, we faced data collection problems. As an example, the data for income and employment are not collected at the city level. They are collected at the regional level. Or we have indicators which are not calculated other than metropolitan cities, Moscow and St. Petersburg, about the quality of air, pollution, PM 2.5. We don't have such data. And this is just an offer probably to you. The Ministry of Economic Development, together with Rosstat, will you help to improve the data collection methodology to get precise statistics for cities? Is this task on on your agenda. And if it is on the agenda, we do know that this topic is already touched upon. This index can be superior and be an indicator which would show what happens where, because PM 2.5 equipment should be installed. It's all complicated. It doesn't just depend on the different methodology, but there are also things can be corrected to make changes in the statistical data collection data at the municipal level. Will you have this job done? Well, basically, you touched upon a very big topic, which we can spend another hour. Yes, we do know that afterwards we will get served champagne. Yes, but statistics, you know, it's a living organism. Statistics methods are continuously improving and updating. But on the other hand, this is an inertial mechanism, and this is the difference of the social economic statistics from some separate analytical research. Because analytical research is research as a search character. We can do something, calculate something, and see whether it worked or not, and if it didn't work, we can forget about it. But statistics is a repeatable result. It's comparable. It means long rows, and this balance between stability of the methodology and the development is basically hard to support. And this is a task which is not unique, and is not unique for Russia at all. So there are two aspects. The first aspect mentioned by Andrey is involvement of new data types, transactional data, data of geoanalytics, and so on. And in analytical research, they've been used for a while already, but they are already implemented also in the official statistics. But this process is not easy. Just by accumulating data bulks, data volumes, we should understand what we are measuring, and this is not easy. The methodological stabilization, clear understanding what these data are about, is not just a question of one period. It should be a series of different research, observations, and comparison to understand what happens when external parameters change. This process is going on. It's not quick. Someone would be willing to make it quicker. We also advocate broader involvement of those data, not to the detriment of the quality and stability and so on and so forth. And the second very important aspect, I already mentioned it a little bit in the very beginning, is the unit of measure. The unit of measure. It is very important, going down to the level of municipalities, not to lose the precision. How can we measure employment by municipal entities of the Moscow city, for example? From time to time they say, how can we do this? Just how? How are we going to calculate employment of people working in one legal entities but in different affiliates? Well, it depends on the topics. It depends on the goals. If we have the goal to evaluate the traffic, then it's one thing. It doesn't mean that people work in Sberbank. It's very important in which branch of Sberbank they work in order to plan transport infrastructure. For other topics, it means the balance of expenses, of what we need, because information costs money. We understand the more precise information we have, the more expensive it would be. And yes, the process is going on. It is underway, also from the point of view of involving new sources and from the point of view of determining the optimum level of elaboration, which would allow us to take proper economic decisions. So I believe, Andrey, that we received the answer to our question, and how should it put in the right way, and also a promise from Polina that this work, also using our all forces, will be continued. Dear colleagues, results of our survey are on the screen. There's no surprise. There will be no surprise. Everyone wants to live in a big city with a lot of opportunities and can do with queues and traffic, but it's not so good from the point of view of living standards in our country, because of course, as I believe, the living quality is a sort of a desire to get as much as possible comfort, live in an individual house, not spend time in queues and traffic jams. And it's obvious that more than a half of people so far have some preliminary task to solve other than going down to Maslow pyramid, which has higher priorities in it. Nevertheless, on the second place, people who want more sun. So the resort city with seasonal employment is okay for them, well, again, everyone wants money. Salehard, third place. They are ready to endure harsh climate, cold winter, but high salaries. Colleagues, we should wrap up our session. Thank you very much, Polina, that you joined us today. Thank you very much, and I envy Andrew, who is out somewhere where he can be so suntanned and get some more sun. And thank you very much, dear viewers, and good luck to you.